What's up? We're back for another Jack theology episode. Took a week off,
Yeah, here we are again.
so
Contrary to popular
um,
belief, Matt and I have a lot going on in our lives, right?
yeah,
Got our
four
got our main
kids.
got our main job, several side hustles, children,
Yeah,
Twitter.
children is always
It's
Twitter
get the older
drama.
the kids get, the more chaos it gets. Like we spend all of our afternoon and evening just shuttling kids back and forth to places. Now one of my kids now can drive, so that helps. But we now there's just three of us shuttling each other around until about 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night. Um, yeah, but I'm just thankful
Yeah,
that my kids aren't involved in swimming. And out of all of the sports and extracurricular activities that my kids have been involved in, swimming required the most amount of time. And I know that multiple of your kids are in swimming. So may the Lord bless you and keep you.
yeah. That's our sounds familiar. Um, Back to school nights are happening for us, so that adds another layer of fun
Open house, teacher
to
parent conferences. Yeah.
yeah to commuting around. But it's fun. I know I'll be bored out of my mind when it's over, so I'm just trying to enjoy it while I can. Um,
You're going to have to get a hobby or something.
I know, pick up a hobby, something.
Just spend more time in the
I'll have
gym.
I'll have a lot of extra money too laying around after this, after spending all the money on the kids. Well, I should say I just won't do the side hustles probably as much.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've done the math,
Yeah,
and I'm not sure who will be out of the house first, the kids or me, because I'm in the ground. Um,
yeah, that's true. That's true.
yeah,
Yes.
I
Um,
got started late, so I'm I'm in it.
yeah.
I'm in it until AARP.
I'm not too far behind you. So yeah, it's good to be back. Lots have been happening over the last couple of weeks. I mean, we could have picked any number of topics to talk about.
Yeah, the closer we
Um,
get right to the election, the crazier, not just politics gets, but the crazier like evangelicalism gets, the crazier
yeah,
U.S. American Christianity gets. Like it's like it's insanity. It's like what Friday the 13th every day. They just say that people are weird or a full moon. People act differently. Like it's
yeah,
a full moon
yeah.
every day now. Like it's just something new.
I think the full moon is coming shortly, like today or tomorrow or sometime soon. So yeah, I thought I'd keep it bigger picture. I'm sure a lot of these little topics that have popped up over the last couple of weeks will come up in our discussion. But you sent me an interesting tweet from sociologist Professor Samuel Perry, who does a lot of study on sociology behind religion
Yeah, in
and
fact, I'll
data.
I'll put it up here for everybody to see.
So he says this: I'm more and more convinced we shouldn't talk about contemporary evangelicalism as a religious movement as much as a sociological category, meaning white reactionary politics. Theological orientation is not remotely the core of this movement, maybe never was, certainly not now. Um, if you've been following us at all, like we've you know flirted with this idea a lot,
We have.
that evangelicalism, yeah, that evangelicalism isn't, it's no longer a theological system, um, but just a political power, if you will, influencer. But I thought we'd talk a little bit about like how the evangelical church got got here. I think you look at the comments. There's a lot of different opinions. I think we may even have different opinions, and they probably are all right in some sense. But I think I don't know if agree completely with Perry. I think it started in a pure kind of way theologically. I mean, they had the four pillars that if you go back in our episodes 20 maybe, we did, we took a week on each pillar. There's four different pillars theologically, and it was really a way to try to unite the church. I think the heart behind evangelicalism was a you have all these different denominations. We know there's tens of thousands of denominations, and so how do we unify? And I think the unity was pure in wanting to spread the gospel, spread the good news of Jesus. And shortly thereafter, maybe 10 or 15 years, is when Jerry Falwell, I think, began to kind of abuse that unity with Reagan and the Republicans for political gain. And so then I think and Kristen Dumez does a great job of writing about this, but from the 80s till now, there's been this fight of theology versus a political system. Um, so I don't know if that frames it well. I don't know if you have anything
Yeah,
to
no, I
add
think
to
I think
frame
you
it.
make some really great points there that are worth remembering at the very beginning of this. I think evangelicalism began, to my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, evangelicalism really began as a reaction. And so, reactionary is not necessarily an incorrect word for evangelicalism. It was in reaction to liberal movement and strength within U.S. American Christianity. What late 1800s, early 1900s. Can't remember exactly when the time is, but Machen and several of these other, large names, evangelicalism kind of becomes a reactionary response to try to bring things, I think, maybe back to a more central understanding or a more conservative theological understanding than maybe, some parts were drifting. Not a commentary on which is right and which is wrong or any of that. But, I think this idea that it is reactionary from the get go is something that's kind of in the framing or in the fiber, at least, of evangelicalism. It kind of began as a reaction and it has, in some sense, remained reactionary. I think untangling that, though, is difficult because was evangelicalism for most of its history, even the beginning, reacting against theology, or was it reacting against politics? Was it reacting against this idea of civil rights? Was it reacting? So I think that it's very difficult to kind of untangle this web of what was theological reaction and what was political, social, to Samuel Perry as a professor of sociology, what was a social reaction? Those things are very difficult to unravel. And I think you made a great point, and then you can run with it again. A lot of the folks, I think, over the century or so, who have found themselves as a part of evangelicalism did not find themselves probably as a part of evangelicalism because it was reactionary or because it was a political movement. I think for a lot of people who wore or wear the label of evangelical, I think it probably is wrong to say that they did it out of reasons that were less than altruistic to their faith and less than altruistic towards Christ. And you point out some things, Dumez's book, Jesus and John Wayne, helped us see this. Once we get into the 80s and 90s with Falwell and the SBC, conservative resurgence, and some of these things, I think we begin to see this drift or this movement of evangelicalism where it takes a very hard turn away from its theological underpinnings and more towards being a more political activist movement, increasingly for conservative politics that got labeled as being the same as conservative theology. And so a lot of folks, I think, found themselves in a situation in evangelicalism that they didn't originally buy into. And some people began to see that and began to deconstruct, began to ask questions, felt like it had moved away from them and become something that they didn't sign up for. And others, I think, were brought along and still don't yet see the changes or see what it has become and still see it as this only way to express theology and faith.
Yeah, I think there's a lot written about that. I think you're right. I mean, when did evangelicalism started? I mean, a lot of folks say, Jonathan Edwards was the start, or John Wesley, one of the two, or both. Both of them started evangelicalism back in the 1700s. Obviously, evangelicalism back then looked a lot different than it does today. I think I tend to look at, and I could be wrong, but I tend to look at modern evangelicalism starting in this, I want to say the 60s, when Leslie Newbegin and a lot of his colleagues, developed and narrowed down those four pillars of what evangelicalism is. And I think their heart behind it was not a reaction, but like we say a lot on here, and everything's political. So it very well probably was a white reaction to what was happening in that time frame, the Jim Crow and civil rights era. I think, the black church certainly hasn't been plagued with these issues like we have in the
Yeah.
white church. And so I
Yeah.
think there is something to that, like your point about it's just a tangled web that's hard
Yeah.
to like unravel,
Well,
right?
and I want to, I don't want to cut you off, but I think
Yeah.
you pointed out something that was really key. That actually, I've sat here thinking, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I just learned something. Uh, I think you're right. And what I heard you say is that evangelicalism started as a philosophical movement, started as a philosophy, and then somewhere around civil rights, somewhere in the 60s, 70s, became a category, became something that was a bucket to be placed in rather than an idea to be framed around.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. And so I think, a lot of folks wanted to just stick with the theology, right? I think in their pure hearts, I don't think they realized the influence the reaction was having on them.
And still do, I think, a lot of people.
Yeah. A
But
lot of
fewer,
people
fewer, and
do.
fewer and fewer
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
climate that we're in.
Wow. Yeah.
You, you're
But
forced to choose
yeah,
sides.
you are. And I think what happened though, I think we watered down the faith too much, that the political influence, and by what I mean by political influence, the outside talking heads, the Jerry Falwell's, the party leaders, the Fox News, all of those people had more influence on the church because we watered down our faith, we watered down our doctrine, we watered down our liturgy, we watered down what it means to be a Christian, and so it became easier to be defined by our political views than by our religious Christian views, because we heard about those things more and more. I mean, even now, practically speaking, as a pastor, I'm sitting here racking my brain. How do I teach Jesus and being a disciple of Jesus to my church? And they really only give me 2 hours a month. Like, how do I do that when those political voices, they're getting every
Yeah.
single day
Like
for
at least
hours a
2 hours
day?
a day. Yeah.
Yeah,
At
yeah.
least.
So to me, that's the fracture here. Is they're functional senior pastors, if you will, are these talking heads, these voices in our society,
Yeah.
and rather
We're
than
being discipled by our
yeah.
media influencers and voices. And we
So
think we're being discipled by Christ and by the Spirit.
yeah, no, we those things, and that's where the tangling, those things become like one. Like, I mean, this, having online, even face to face discussions, it's like people don't see that they're tangled up. They just see it as one thing, right? They see it as, well, this is the biblical view. This is what Jesus wants. This is what it means to be a Christian. And you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's read the Bible. And yeah. And so I think that's where it led. And so I tend to agree with Perry, saying that it's not a theological orientation any longer. It's just a political reactionary movement. And I think that's sad, and it's led to a lot of the problems that we see today. Um, and I think there are folks that are fighting it. Um, you know, One of our friends sent us a text about the I pulled it up, but the what do you call it? The Evangelical Confession of 2024, which is a direct response to this. Really, I think it's a if you read the statement, um, in this moment of social conflict and political division, we confess the following Christian convictions, and then they go into it, and it's a complete reaction to Trump. Let's just be honest. To MAGA, to make America great again, Christian
Yeah.
nationalism. We give our allegiance to Jesus Christ as Lord alone, And then they go on to explain that we're not going to give our allegiance to a political ruler. Um, and and on and on. Every one of them you could connect easily to the MAGA, cult that's out there. And in some sense, I think this is right. So I feel like there's a, again, white reaction to what's happening.
Yeah.
And
I just
and
don't know
I,
how
I
helpful
I
it
don't know.
is.
Yeah, I don't know how. Like, why are we trying to save the name evangelical? That When I saw that, I just was like, what does it matter? Like, let's just move on from that language. The Bible gives us great language for who we are, right? Like, we're Christian, we are followers of the way. Um, like, the word evangelical, I don't know why it needs to be saved. I think a lot of these folks that signed it, and some of them, many of them, I love. I love their writings and their stuff, and I love to follow them on social media. But like, what is in it for you to save this word? And again, some of it I think goes back to money, because a lot of these are professors at evangelical colleges still trying to recruit evangelical students to their colleges, and all of those things, and those things are in flux. I mean, evangelical colleges are closing left and right, because people are leaving quickly. Because let's be honest, the culture around us, the average churchgoer sees this stuff. They see the tangled web that people live in. They see it, and they're like, I want nothing to do with that. And so they exit stage left or stage right out of the church. So we're losing our base.
Yeah.
Evangelicals are.
And it's a fine line, I think, between being involved in politics and being owned by politics. And, I agree, evangelicalism as a word. Um, our mutual professor Lynn Sweet says, about some words, it's been touched by too many dirty hands. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like, that really describes evangelicalism, is that it's not that the word didn't have value and may not still have some value, but it's been touched by so many dirty hands. You're gonna have to sacrifice way too much time, energy, and effort to redeem something that just at this point may not be worth the juice may not be worth the squeeze for that word. It's been fascinating. As I've kind of seen people react to those who walk away from evangelicalism without walking away from faith or Christ. And people have a tendency sometimes to link together Christianity and evangelicalism. Like, you can't be a Christian without being an evangelical. And they'll try to like frame it around this idea, well, the Bible calls us to evangelize. I'm like, okay, similar root words, but you understand that these are like two totally separate things, right? Like, evangelical is
Yeah.
a category designation for somebody who believes certain things. And as you pointed out earlier, the things that now define what an evangelical is are not the things that define what an evangelical was 10 years ago, let alone 40 or 50 years ago, whenever those four theological pillars came out. Evangelicalism is no longer defined by theological pillars. Evangelicalism is now defined by political pillars. And it kind of changed by the day, right? I mean, at one point
Yeah.
it was abortion, and homosexuality, and then Roe v. Wade got struck down. It was no longer abortion that defined them. Then it was pronouns and transgender. Well, okay, Roe v. Wade's now back up there. Also, now abortion is defining us again. So it really, and I hate to say this because I know that this is something that's thrown around from both sides, it's really kind of the flavor of the day. Whatever it is in that moment that the Republican GOP party cares about is what becomes a pillar of evangelicalism theologically. And it's insanity
Yeah.
because it's never the same thing from moment to moment. And at this point, right now, frankly, it's whatever Trump chooses to care about is what are the stakes in the ground for defining who is an evangelical and who isn't. And that's just insanity.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a Project 25 now, right? The Project 2025 is
which nobody will claim, but
That's our
everybody
new
knows, what's going on.
that's our new Bible for evangelicals, really. I mean, what it comes down to is everything is political. I think we have to understand that. And is your politics shaped by your reading of scriptures and your religion, or is your politics shaped by a political party? In evangelicals' case, and that's what Samuel Perry has found in his research, their politics are shaped by a political party, not by the scriptures. And so, which is why a lot of them will tell you when you quote Jesus, they say, "Well, you can't listen to Jesus on this stuff, right?" Whoa, it's like it's right out there. So, I read a funny quote from John MacArthur the other day. He said that,
Who never attempts to
um,
be funny.
well, he wasn't intending to be funny,
he
but I
never
thought
attempts
it
to
was
he
funny.
never intends to be funny, but
He said something to the nature of, "No one ever became liberal by reading the Bible. They became liberal by going to universities." And it's funny because like I became more hit what he would call liberal by actually reading the Bible, which I kind of laughed at. Like, hey, John,
yeah,
here's one that
and not
somebody
while I
actually
was
read the
not while I was in
Bible.
university either. Um,
No,
yeah, it's this. Trump has decimated evangelicalism. He opened it and exposed it for what it is and what it was, which is, as Samuel Perry said, a white reactionary political movement. Trump exposed that underbelly, and everybody said, we don't care. It is what it is. He posted some research a couple of days ago. That said 85% of evangelicals will vote for Trump and do vote for Trump no matter what. And the statement that he made was, do you have to be an evangelical and fully support Trump? No. But voting for Trump is the badge of entry into evangelicalism, which I thought was a very interesting way to say it, is that they are so tied together, and evangelicalism is so sold its soul to whatever Trump chooses to care about in any given moment. They've deified him and his politics, that you're in as an evangelical if you're with Trump, and you're essentially out as an evangelical if you're not. And because evangelicals now tie Christianity to evangelicalism, you can't be a Christian and not be evangelicalism. You either support Trump vis-a-vis, or you're not a Christian. And
yeah,
that's like Roman
you're
Empire level insanity
yeah.
and bad theology there. But that's where we are. And you know, the church keeps kind of, emperor has no clothes, kind of ignoring it. But we just need to call a spade and say, this is where we are, and this is not okay.
Yeah, Trump said it the other day. He said he's speaking to a Christian group, and he said, "I will give you the most power. I'll give you all the power." Like he knows what they want and why he can say anything. He just tells them that, and then he can go out and, like he said, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, and the Christians will still vote for
Still vote
me.
for me. And they would.
And yeah, they would. You're right. And those of us that aren't voting for Trump, oops, I let that slip.
And they
Get
have.
called
I mean, insurrection.
commies. What?
I mean, they
Well,
have.
yeah,
I
Jesus
wouldn't vote
saves
for Trump if he went
banners.
out on
Yeah.
Fifth Avenue and shot somebody. Trump incited an insurrection where people died, and you still support him. So, I,
Well, that's fake news. That's what I'm told.
and
January
so and
6th.
so it will be said if he were to walk
Executive.
out on Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody. You will justify it and explain it away. All of you Trump supporters will, because you have justified
Yeah.
and explained away every other shitty thing that he has said and done. Like in Springfield,
They're eating the dogs.
the pets. Think of the
Hide your
pets, Matt.
animals.
I,
Oh
I,
man. Well, that's another example of just evangelicals losing their collective minds over this guy. I mean, how many evangelical people I saw on social media trying to prove Trump right in that
They
it
have no
was
choice,
just
though.
insane.
They have no choice because it's not, because Sam Perry is right, because it's not a theological movement based in the way of Jesus. It's white reactionary politics. So they have no choice. Evangelicals have no choice but to support Trump, no matter what the hell Trump does, because without Trump, they have no power or they have no voice. So they have to, at this point, support anything that Trump does and shine his shit and polish it to look good and presentable no matter what he does, because without him they have no power, they have no voice. And that's really the proof in the pudding to what Sam says, is that it really has become white reactionary politics, because they've lost their ever-loving minds. There's nothing Christ-centered about any of this, but they're not after the way of Jesus. Love your neighbor. They're not after the way of Jesus. They're after power and having a voice, not losing in the public forum the status
Yeah,
that they've enjoyed for, frankly, far too long.
yeah. It's
Because
interesting as you were talking.
without evangelicals, we don't have Trump.
No, you don't have the modern. Well, yeah, you don't have the Republican Party where it's at today. Trump exposed what evangelicals really wanted was power, and so he capitalized on that, and he just plays it to a T. He's a genius at that. Their desire for power, and he's a con man. I mean, it's been said over and over. But even before Trump, though, Republicans were using evangelicals for
Yeah,
their vote.
absolutely. He did not make evangelicals what we are, and I was a part of evangelicalism for far too long. So I'll include myself in that. Trump did not make evangelicals, but without evangelicals, we don't have Trump. Is my point.
Yeah, no, you're right.
We have lots of other people who are nearly as bad, but without evangelicals, Trump would not have would not have been elected and will not be elected without evangelicals.
It's interesting, Perry. I'm trying to find it, but you brought up a good point when we were talking about the whole white vote thing. I think Trump chose evangelicals because right now in America, white folks control the electorate because of the electoral college. I think Samuel Perry did some data that showed that white Americans have 30% more voting power than black Americans and like 60% more voting power than Latino Americans simply by where we live in America because of the electoral college. And I think the one thing politically Trump knew and knows is that, which is why he's so racist and doesn't care if he's racist, because he doesn't genuinely care about the black vote or Latino vote. He only wants the white vote. And you look at the data even today and all that he's done, all the racist statements him and Vance have said. Vance had an appalling one today about Kamala, or yesterday. I read it today. And it's just like, they don't care because they know they just need to secure the white vote in these states. And it's crazy. And so what Samuel Perry's saying, this white reactionary political movement, yeah, Trump created, you're right on, like, and he did it for a purpose. He's capitalizing on our whiteness.
Yeah. I'll also say, Christians are the most gullible people out there as well. And I think Trump has a sense for who is easily conned and who is not. And Christians, and I think we saw this during COVID. Christians tend to have, in my opinion, a higher capacity for conspiracy and gullibility and buying into things that are not true than the general population. Now, I'm sure there's research and all, on this. Perhaps that's because, most of what we found our belief system on is faith. I mean, so there's a part, of that kind of makes a lot of sense, right? You have to have some sort of faith. We believe in, things that we cannot see. And so, it makes sense from that angle, but the leveraging of that for evil and sin is dangerous, and I think easier, probably because of that capacity. And Trump, as any grifter, con man, will do, will
Yeah.
find a way in. And for many, Christians, unfortunately, it was that. And
Yeah,
now
that's a
look,
great
now
point.
look where we are.
I hadn't I hadn't thought of, but yeah, the gullibility of Christians is so true, and um,
I mean, they're eating our pets,
I
Matt.
I think I think
Christians are
yeah.
like, they're eating our
Well,
pets. No, they're not. I mean, oh my.
yeah,
Read a book and not the Bible. You can read the Bible, but read something else too. Uh,
yeah,
Turn off the news.
uh, yeah. Turn off the news, and then apparently, if you're a right winger too, it's the assassination attempts were by Kamala and Biden's people. Even though these people are clearly
Like registered
certified
Republican. Yeah.
right wing crazies, that just don't like Trump for various reasons. But anyways, yeah,
Whenever you
it,
radicalize someone, you don't get to choose. You radicalized your base, and then you thought, you thought you weren't going to get hurt. You thought that was only going to go in the opposite direction from you. You let somebody made this metaphor on my wall. If you let a lion out of its cage, you don't get to choose who gets eaten. Like, whenever you
yeah,
whenever you release a weapon, that destruction at some point is out of your control. What gets destroyed? Uh, you've spent years now radicalizing your base, the GOP has, and weaponizing them, and now they're standing back, shocked, at it being their people who are doing these things, and having to continue this mirage that, oh no, it's not. This is the left. This is the Democrats. Okay, I'm not washing my hands or saying Democrats should either, but I'm saying GOP, you got to own. You got to own this shit.
yeah, yeah,
You got to own the state of affairs. Evangelicals, you got to own this. Like I'm not saying let anybody else off the hook, but come on, like
yeah.
this is all you.
You got to look under the hood here, and we wonder then why the church isn't growing, why our churches are shrinking. Like, let's look under the hood, right?
Oh, but
I
my
think it's
church is
because
growing, Matt. What's your church preaching? Well, my pastor's pro 2A. Yeah,
yeah.
they pro Trump.
Well, it's the great migration of
Let
the
me tell
church
you,
is what's
that's not a
happening.
church.
Yeah, no. Yeah, wait till he starts preaching the gospel. People are going to start leaving and revolting. Um,
No, it is. People are running out of evangelicalism like rats out of a burning building. And yes, your church may be the exception. Look at the numbers. People are running out of Christianity like
well,
rats out
in
of a burning building.
4 years, it's gone down by almost 15%, which is huge. Because before it was either plateau or just a little bit, or maybe even go up a little bit. Church attendance went from like 70 something. I think now the last year was 62%. So, um, and those and those people aren't weekly attenders either. That's just like somebody says, "Hey, I go to church. I attend this church." So yeah, it's dropping significantly, and I think this is a huge reason why. I think this is I would call it number one. And a lot of people that I talk to that reject God, they would call themselves atheists now, that maybe grew up in the church. A lot of what they're rejecting is this God,
I was going to
this
say, yeah.
evangelical Trump God. Yeah,
I mean, I don't want to put words in atheist's mouth. You're right. Like, I don't want to say, no, you're not really
yeah,
rejecting God. But I'll tell you, most of them, atheists and especially agnostics who have been in religion, it kind of came down to, in the beginning, I'm not rejecting God. I'm just rejecting your God. That's where it
yeah,
began.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So it's a big problem, and I think, and then a lot of people are trying to and this is a lot of theological debate. My mind's going all over sorts of different places, but a big theological debate is who is God right now. Like the Hayes, Richard Hayes and Chris Hayes just released this book, Widening God's Mercy, which I just got it. I need to read. But reading reviews is there really their argument is God is is different than what I initially thought. God is different than the evangelical God is really what the book is about, from based on reviews I'm reading. And so there's this, and there's a lot of different debates. Even our boy in Idaho, what was it, Thomas, who got just defrocked for being affirming
Oh yeah, Tom Oden.
professor. Yeah, he similarly, like, he's kind of like framing a different view of who God is, and I think there is this resistance to this evangelical God, because I think theologians are seeing, like, no, no, not that's not the God we worship. This is the God we worship. And even our theologians now, which I think is good and healthy, I think it shows a sign that, like, hey, something's wrong. It shows a sign. At least theologians are looking under the hood and being like, let's figure this out, because this isn't working. And so I think we need to have more robust conversations around that. But evangelicals don't want to, right? They don't want to have these conversations. They don't want to critically think or dialogue around a different view of who God is, because they just want to be. Most of them just want to be told what to do and who to
No,
vote for. And
there's fear. There's fear
yeah,
because
yeah,
if it be proven somehow, even the conversation were to happen, that God may not be quite the way that highly conservative Republican fundamentalism has taught for decades that God is, then it will affect their white reactionary politics, right? Like
mm-hmm.
that's the fear, isn't that God is going to be more loving, or even, I don't know that the fear is that they would be wrong. The fear is that it's going to affect the politics. It's going to affect who they have to see as their neighbor and how they have to treat their neighbor.
Well, that's just it. So the news is kind of running into this conversation, which I had a feeling it would. But the Haitian thing, right? What it boils down, what that whole thing, and Trump saying what he said, and why I believe he said it, is because he knows his white evangelical base is afraid of immigrants. He's afraid to have them in their neighborhoods. They're afraid of people, that
Yeah.
aren't white coming in and disrupting their life, and
He said it the
he's
whole way
playing
through
on
the
that.
he said it the whole way through the debate. Literally every single question, no matter what it had to do with, he talked about immigrants. Every
Yeah.
single answer he mentioned immigrants. So you're
Mm.
exactly right. It's very calculated, and it's very calculated to the reason that you gave.
Yeah. And that's what that whole thing was about. And people can't see it. Like, it's a funny thing that we laugh about, but Trump is playing on the fears, which is why, like, see, look, if we let immigrants in our country, this is what happens. They're going to eat your dog. And it's like, what? And it's so racist. Yes, it's racist. If you think that people are eating dogs and cats,
Been
then
saying about people for
it's a
years,
racist thing.
about black
Yeah,
people,
it's a
about
racist.
Asians for years. They eat dogs and cats. Like, it's racist. It's a dog
Yeah.
whistle, and it's been going on for decades and decades and decades, and it's deplorable. And yes, Trump
Eh,
is deplorable for using it.
Yeah. And Vance just admitted that he made it up.
Yeah, and said, "It's yeah, absolutely. We're going to make up stories." Creative, absolutely. We're going to create stories if it helps us point out the greater fears. I think is the word he used, fear.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
to the American people, things that they should be afraid. So the fear isn't having the dog or cat eat, and the fear is that somebody black is going to move into your neighborhood. That's the fear.
Yeah. No, that is.
It's not about pets.
Uh,
It's about
and we see it.
straight up, absolute 1960s racism.
Hmm. And we see it. The Christian nationalists, too. Their whole goal is to separate the whites away from every other uh, color, skin. Um, where else did this happen?
Hmm.
Uh,
Where?
hmm. And actually, I'll have to find it for next time. Uh, if I had a few minutes, I could remember what book I read. But the Nazi Germany actually studied America and how to eradicate a people group with the way we were treating blacks. Um, it was in Wilkinson's book. I'll
Oh
find it
wow.
for next time. But she talked about that idea that she has she's writing kind of a history book, so she has historical stuff to back it up. That actually Nazi Germany sent people to America to learn how we were kind of putting down African Americans in our country, um, to apply that to their own, racial wars they were having. So
Wow.
yeah, um, it continues to today. It just keeps going, and so we've kind of moved on. I mean, obviously, there's still racial discrimination against Black African Americans, but we're really the issues become immigrants in America. And as the Republican governor in Ohio was saying, these are legal immigrants. It's not even we're arguing about legal or illegal. Just they're from Haiti. Um,
Right.
you know, it's very sad. And what gives me hope is, seeing some of these stories, and in one of our former, I don't call him professor, but he worked at the university you and I went to, very conservative. He's pastoring in Springfield. I know there's certainly other churches that are trying to help the Haitian community, which makes me happy that to see like um, Christians truly applying the idea of loving your neighbor, even if they look different or act different, or are all those things, and really trying to care for them. And I think that's what we're called to be as Christians, is following Jesus and loving our neighbor, and no matter if they're an immigrant or not, and even if they are, for me, if they're a Trump supporter, um, loving them and caring for them and listening, and trying to share the love of Christ with them. I think that's what we're called to do. And that cliche statement that Christians, you look so much unlike your Christ.
Yeah.
And I think evangelicals, highlight that through and through.
Yeah. Well, and I think you made a good point. If you want to vote for Trump, vote for Trump. Here's the thing that bothers me. What bothers me is utilizing your faith as the leverage for the reason why you're voting for Trump. For me, and we've said this before, just straight up say, I'm going to vote for Trump and it's for these reasons. I'm going to vote GOP and it's for these reasons. And don't tie it to your theology. Don't tie it to Jesus. Don't overlook all of these things that are going on. Just be straight up. Yeah. His deplorable personality, the felonies that he's committed, the fact that he has raped and pillaged both women and entire communities, the fact that he's a bold-faced liar, that he did. I'm going to overlook all of those things for these reasons, and none of them have to do with my theology. Just say that, and it's like, okay. But once you start tying it back to your faith and jumping through hoops, and then saying that
Yeah.
people who don't, are far from God, are going to hell, then at that point, I'm like gonna start slugging, like I'm not a violent man, I may look like I could throw a punch, but I'm a wuss. But you're putting me on the edge there when you start saying those kinds of things about that
happened to me recently. Like I got told, I was going to hell because I, was a progressive liberal and Marxist and all those names.
I love the name calling.
Yeah,
you don't even know what Marxist means.
No, I have no idea.
Go ahead and call me a communist and a socialist, and then go read Acts 2:42 to 48. Why don't you go read the early church and then call me a socialist and a Marxist? Yeah, go read the Sermon on the Mount and then let's talk about Marxism.
Yeah, no, it's so true. Read the Bible a little bit, you'll find more evidence for communism.
You're gonna be shocked. Yeah. In fact, if there is one economic system or one social system that is furthest away from God, I'm pretty sure it's going to be capitalism. I'm not saying move out of a capitalism country. I'm not saying capitalism is evil, but I'm just saying, like, in the order of things, if you're like ordering things as to which is probably closest to the heart of God and the intent for His kingdom, not necessarily earthly kingdoms, capitalism is probably the bottom of the list. It's like super
Great.
close.
It's funny, at my Christian high school I went to, in Bible class, we picked up on this, me and some of my friends, and we asked our teacher that, like, it sounds like the Bible is like teaching communism. And of course They're all flustered.
You
And
hear that
because
word,
they
you're
got
like,
yeah,
alarm bells are going off.
because they got flustered though, we're teenagers. We picked up on it. And so every day before class, when we come in, we'd write "Communism is the way" on the board, and he would get so mad.
Oh my gosh! Never let him see you sweat as a teacher. You guys got him.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, so true. Yeah, that's a whole other podcast talking about. We should do that sometime. That would be fun. Talk about capitalism and the scriptures. Like one verse, like I never knew was there until I started reading the Bible, because obviously no one preached about it. Jesus literally tells you basically not to set up a retirement account. Like, he's like, don't fill your pillars and put your feet up at the end of the day. Basically, never stop working and providing and serving your community. And the American capitalist system is like, yeah, but build your pillars so you can put your feet up and rest at the end of your life. It's in Luke, but there's tons of them out there. Tons of them in the scriptures that, like, you read them. And rich young ruler, it's like, I preached the rich young ruler at the church in Princeton here, and they all thought I hated rich people. I go, I'm just reading the Bible here. I don't hate rich people. Give me your money. I need to pay bills.
I don't hate you, but if I did, I'd hate you less if you gave me your money.
Oh, anyways.
Why don't you absolve yourself of that sin by donating it?
Yes. I definitely said something along those lines because I remember the conversation and who it was, and he did not like me after that conversation. I was young and stupid. Now I'm just old and stupid.
Yeah, well.
Anyhow, yeah, I think I don't know. I think we said it. I feel like we did.
All right, I think so.
All right.
You ready to move on?
Show.
Let's do it. Let's do it. All right, here we are in the after show where Matt and I spent a couple of minutes reminding ourselves why this is called Jack Theology, or half the reason, I guess, why it's called Jack Theology.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been doing pretty good overall. So I was down like 10 pounds, and then I stupidly celebrated the weekend being down 10 pounds. So I haven't jumped back on the scale yet this week because obviously I didn't want to know.
Yeah, you didn't want to know the number,
weekend,
right? Yeah.
What the weekend did to me, but
I mean, yeah, right though. I mean, if you don't see it, it doesn't exist.
Yeah. But I am feeling good. Been on a running plan, feel stronger running, which that's amazing too, getting back to it. I mean, you train for a marathon, so you understand it. Like the first week or two, you're just like, I'm never going to be able to run more than a mile.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. And then all of a sudden you just like, you go longer, you feel better and better. So
it's crazy. It is. It's crazy how your body how quickly it adapts.
Yeah.
And on a running plan like that.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm plugging away at that. And even today at the CrossFit gym, they had rowing, and I was like, I told the coach, I was like, I'm just gonna run instead of the row because I'm training for this thing, and so that's what I did. So
you can do that at CrossFit. Yeah. You can just make wow.
Yeah, I do all the time. I'm like, I've been going so long, dude.
I'm gonna do whatever I want.
That's yeah. I mean, I still follow the workout plan, but some I'll sub out different things. Yeah, I'll be like, you know what? I don't need to do 100 squats today. I'm not going to do that. And I'll do like presses instead or something, overhead presses, or I don't know. I listen to my body. That's what I've learned as I gotten older too, is like, listen to your body so you can come back tomorrow, So like if there's 100 squats in the workout and on squat 5, I feel my knee getting tight, I just don't do anymore. I'm like, I'm not going to do 95 more of these because then tomorrow I'm not going to be able to bend this knee. Right.
My body always says stay in bed.
Yeah. So, That's what I've been learning.
If I were listening with my body, I would never show up.
Yeah, well, that's true too. That's why I love the class model, because I know if I just show up to the class, I'm going to do it. I don't know if you've ever done this. When I show up to the gym and it's just there's no class, sometimes I waste a
Sometimes,
lot of
yeah,
time.
I'll just sit there
Yeah,
on my phone. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I guess that's me. How you doing, man?
Yeah, so we're 6 weeks out, I think, from the show, or just 6 weeks and a few days out from the show. And yeah, I met my trainer for the first time
Oh wow, cool.
last weekend to go over posing. And so that was an interesting experience. I'm like, I pose in front of the mirror all the time. He's like, no, yeah, see, you got it, you understand it. What I have learned though is that is a classic bodybuilding pose, so I don't actually have to do either one of those poses,
Okay.
because I'm not going into the classic bodybuilding category because I think I'm too small. He didn't say that, but that's what I'm reading in between the lines. It's like, dude, you're just too small.
That's what you heard.
Yeah, that's what I heard. I think also, I think I'm getting the starter category. I mean, I'm old. I'm like 46. So I'll be in, like the wheelchair. No offense. I'll be in the old person category.
Yeah.
With all the aches and pains. But yeah, what is it? The one that's board shorts. I think physique or something like that.
Okay.
Which my wife is very happy because I think it might have been a deal breaker if I was out there in posers. So I'm in the board shorts. Yeah, I'm in the board shorts category. So she's thankful, and so is anybody who has ever had me, as their pastor, is also thankful that I'm going to be in the board shorts category. So yeah, buying those, and it's crazy. Still eating almost nothing now. Like he severely cut the carbs now. I'm eating mostly fish. I get a little bit of chicken every day, and it's just fish and rice all day. Fish and rice, fish and rice,
Wow.
fish and rice. Yeah, but weight's going down. Body fat's going down. I looked at my legs the other day, and they're like webs of veins everywhere. And I was like, okay, that's just freaky.
Wow.
But you just like you said, with running, you follow the plan and trust it. And he looked at me this week, and he was like, you probably lose about 10 or 12 more pounds before you get there. I was like, from where? So yeah, there we go. But it's an experience. Yes, but there are only two poses, for it's a front pose and a back pose, and it's not, the biceps pose, and it's not the the wrist pose. But it's like you might want to actually practice and know those anyway, even though you don't need them, because you're going to want to do them in pictures because those look good. Thus implying the ones I'm actually going to be doing do not look good.
What is it? You just stand there and like flex or something?
Yeah, it's just a straight up flex. One arm on your hip and the other kind of out in the front, and then you turn around and essentially do the same pose in the back. Yeah. So
okay, that sounds a lot like what they do at our muscle gym here for their show off your shit show.
That's exactly what a bodybuilding show is, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I think he thought, he was like, when we get to the spring or something, maybe we'll do a classic or change categories or something like that. Once we, we'll spend the winter putting on some muscle. I was like, thank you. but see, like compared to him though, I look like a twig. I'm like,
yeah.
I'm not nearly as I'm not nearly as built as I thought I was.
Well, those guys, use a little extra to help them.
Yeah, and the older that you get, the less extra you make on your own. That's for sure.
Yeah,
it's nowhere to go from here, Matt, but down.
I follow a bodybuilder. I sent you some of his videos. The big bald-headed tattooed guy, and he says for bodybuilding, he's like, if you're not like have a baseline of like diet locked in and your gear cycles locked in, don't even bother being a professional bodybuilder. That's what he said. Don't even come to me for coaching on bodybuilding.
That's funny.
I was like, oh, all right.
I don't know if there are any professional bodybuilders that are knocking on the door 50 years old, but
No, you're
it's
just
just
having fun with it.
I am.
Yeah.
I am. It's just it's a bucket list item.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right. Well,
All right, man.
we'll see what happens next week. Take care.
All right, bye.